Greetings. Pastor Mark here from the Word of Life Fellowship Church in Omaha, Nebraska, with an encouraging word for you today about perspective. Now, for time's sake, we're not going to read all the passages, but I'm going to give you some chapters to reference. So beginning in the book of 1 Samuel, the Old Testament, chapter 9, we find the Lord choosing Saul to be king over Israel, and the prophet Samuel is to anoint him. Well, later, the Lord actually rejects Saul, and in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, the Lord sends Samuel to anoint David king of Israel. Although he doesn't tell him David's name, he sends him to David's father's house and then selects him from there. However, perspective. What does that have to do with perspective? So, by the way, forgive if there's a glare off of my glasses off the screen. I apologize for that. Excuse me. So King Saul and David were both anointed by the same prophet. So think about that for a second. Samuel is the prophet of God, and he anoints them both to be king. Not at the same time, obviously. But there's four things I want to mention today for you to remember when facing an opposing obstacle, giant, mountain, something in your life that is either wreaking havoc in your life or putting stress and anxiety into your life or trying to hinder you from what it is that God has for you in your life, blessings. So King Saul, number one, Saul and David were anointed by the same prophet, and probably, we don't know it for a fact, so we'll just say probably, by the same anointing oil. And they both faced the same giant. Goliath was his name. Yeah, Saul was there first. Goliath is bellowing out the curses on Israel and against the Lord himself. And Saul, number two, Saul measures Goliath against himself. And he was convinced that he could not win against that giant. Third thing, David measured Goliath against his God, against David's God, and was convinced that he couldn't lose. The fourth thing, a wrong perspective can overrule our anointing, while a correct perspective can activate it and does activate it. So, Saul was anointed king. We know that. I truly believe that if he would have prayed and asked the Lord's help to be with them in that battle, that they would have overcome that enemy and God would have given them the victory. I believe that. But his perspective prevented that because it was upon himself and upon his own soldiers and in their own abilities and limitations, and therefore judged themselves, well, we can't do this. Instead of his perspective being upon his God, that God can overcome anything, any obstacle. Our perspective matters. Do we measure the obstacles in our lives by our own abilities or by our infinite God, who is limitless, by the way? The answer to that question should be obvious, but it is so easy to always think from the perspective of self. That perspective of self, will rob us from many victories in our lives and hinder us from moving forward. As human beings living in this country, we may be equal under the law, but we all are different in our natural abilities and our talents. Some can run very fast, while others not so much. Some can jump very high while standing flat-footed. Some not so much. Some of us grasp the high-level concepts of mathematics like a duck to water, while some of us struggle with long division. Our abilities are not all the same, and we're not all exactly alike. Our God, however, is not limited as we are. He doesn't have limitations at all. He does not have limitations. He can do anything, anywhere, at any time, with and for anyone, if you'll just believe and trust him. What am I saying? Stop looking to yourself and your own abilities when you're facing a giant in your life. But keep the perspective that David had, that God is so much more than anything that you and I will face. With God, we can overcome any challenge or trial that life throws at us. Perspective. It makes all the difference in the world. I hope that's a blessing to you today. I hope that you receive this encouraging word and that you believe and give God a chance and watch him bring victories in your life that in yourself you can never pull off. Well, God bless you. We love you. We'll see you Sunday morning at 10:30 to Hilton, the True by Hilton in Omaha here, 72nd and Haskell. That's just a block north of Grover, just north of Interstate 80 on 72nd Street. There's a Scooter's Coffee Shop. Take a right on Haskell and pull into the Hilton's parking lot or on the main floor, the large conference room. God bless you. Have a wonderful day and a good evening. We love you.